Few words in the English language are as evocative as the simple four-letter word that has been the theme of this service tonight, the word home. Say that word to someone whose parents neglected or abused them. Brace yourself for their response. Say the word to a single person who's always wanted to find a spouse and have a couple kids running around underfoot, but it never worked out for them. Be prepared for a conversation about dashed dreams. Say the word home right now to any of the 6 million Syrian refugees who have been displaced from their homes. Be ready for sobs and tears, understandably so, especially this time of year. So please keep praying for peace. Say the word home, however, to someone who had high-functioning parents and reasonably sane siblings, and you better have some time on your hands because everyone has some heartwarming stories to tell about growing up in a home like that. The truth tonight is that despite the health of the home you or I grew up in, we all know deep down what a home could be, what a home should be. Every person in this place understands the potential that resides inside the idea of home. God made sure of it. He printed it on our hearts. Home, where you experience a deep sense of belonging and rootedness, safety and protection from the world. Home, where you are loved irrationally and accepted unconditionally, forgiven totally when wrongs are admitted and confessed. Home, where you know for dead sure that everyone is for you every day in every circumstance in your life. Now, those are powerful human yearnings. They exist in all of us, no exceptions. God hardwired us that way. Now, my message tonight is painfully simple and mercifully brief. Just 2 points, really. First, if God has graced your life with a spouse or a kid or two, or if you're older like me with kids and grandkids, thank Him on your knees every day for the circle of people who make up your home. And while you're still on your knees, ask God for additional wisdom and courage to create the richest sense of home you possibly can with the days that remain in your one and only life. Ask Him to help you fill your home with ridiculous levels of belonging, irrational amounts of love, total acceptance, forgiveness, and the absolute strongest possible sense of everybody being for everybody else, cheering everybody else on through the challenges of life. In so doing, you gift every person in that home with a treasure that money can't buy, a treasure that will yield dividends for generations to come. In my view, Christmas is the perfect time of year to thank God afresh for the gift of the circle of people who are in your home. In my view, Christmas is the perfect time of year for every member of a home to rededicate themselves to adding as much value and love and concern and prayer for everyone else in the home. Additionally, I think Christmas is the ideal time of year, if there's brokenness in a home, to try to fix it. It's the perfect time of year to reach a hand across a divide and say, I'm sorry. Or can we reconcile? Can we try this again? I don't know why, but around Willow, there are a lot of marriages and family relationships, extended family relationships that get reconciled around Christmas time. Maybe it's that theme of the biblical story of grace and peace coming to earth, and some people decide to stop fighting around Christmas time. And they say, can we have another go? Can we move on from here? And if there's a reconciliation that needs to happen in your home this Christmas, I'm not beyond pleading. Would you be the person who takes the first step? Would you be the person who extends the hand before the other one does? Would you be the first one to say, I'm sorry. Let's try again. See what God does. He might surprise you. There's only one other matter that I want to mention before we sing Silent Night and send you on your way. In Luke 2, the text tells us that on the night when Christ was born, angels announced good tidings of great joy for all people. This news was for everybody in the human race. Singular, married, widowed, orphan, homeowners, the homeless, citizens, or refugees, doesn't matter. What was this universal good news exactly? That the Christmas child, the one in the stable, was going to grow up and make it possible for anyone and everyone on the planet to have a home in a relationship with God the Father. You heard it right. Through the birth, life, and atoning death of Jesus Christ on the cross, the door has been swung wide open so that even the least deserving among us can be reconciled to God and experience all those incredible feelings of home in a relationship with God the Father. I know this is hard for skeptics to buy. It's true nonetheless. You can feel a deep sense of belonging to God. You can actually feel irrational amounts of love coming from heaven to your heart. I have felt it many, many times. You can feel unconditional acceptance and total forgiveness coming from the one who took your place on the cross. And you can feel that powerful sense that God is both with us and for us as we navigate the challenges in our daily lives. In a very real way, all of us can experience the richness and the blessing of home in a relationship with God. One day, Jesus was trying to drive this idea into the minds of his listeners, so he told what many believe is the most emotional and memorable story in the whole of the New Testament. It's the story of the headstrong young man who blows out the back door of his father's home with bags bulging with his dad's money. He's thoroughly convinced that what awaits him in the big city is going to be so much better than hanging around his lousy home for one more day. When he gets to the big city, he tries and buys everything his heart desires, and yet over time, he has that sickening feeling in the pit of his stomach that no amount of partying and no amount of pleasure seeking is going to address the growing ache of loneliness and emptiness in his inner person. And Jesus tells this story very cleverly because he gets right to this emotional moment and he says, and one day the young man came to his senses. I love that phrase. He just comes to his senses. I picture the young man hungover one morning, hungry, and all of a sudden he realizes, this isn't working for me. This is a huge admission for a headstrong young guy to make. More of this, he reasons, is not going to take me where I really want to go. And then the thought comes crashing into his consciousness. Home was better than this. It wasn't perfect, but net it beats this. And then his emotions get stirred. I was loved back home. I was listened to back home. I was valued and had a sense of belonging and stability and rootedness back home. And slowly the idea comes to him, maybe I could swallow my pride and go home. So he does. And you all know how the story ends. His father meets him out on the road, and he weeps with joy and hugs him and kisses him and walks with his arm around him back home, where he throws a huge celebration for him. Now, when Jesus finishes the telling of this story, he simply opens his arms wide and asks all of his listeners, if any of them wanted to come home to the Father right then and right there. He's asking if anyone wants to review the value proposition of their current life situation. Is it working for you? Is it addressing the inner needs of the human soul? Is it taking you where you really want to go? Or is it time to come to your senses, Jesus was asking. Because if you come to your senses and you want to come home, Jesus says, you could come home to the Father right here and right now. Now, this is the 40th Christmas Eve service that I've been privileged to lead here at Willow, and the thought occurred to me last week that all I've ever really done at Christmas services over the decades is describe why Jesus left his home in heaven to come to earth, what he did to make your redemption and mine possible, and then every single Christmas, I simply ask people as sincerely as I know how, is it time for you to come home? Can you come to your senses this Christmas? Can you swallow your pride this Christmas? Can you bet the farm that what God has awaiting you in a relationship with him is better than what you have now? Earlier in the program, you heard Nick talk about crawling around in the field searching for a lost set of keys. He's getting increasingly worried and frustrated. Any of you in the last few months feel like you're lost in a field and you're in a futile search for a set of keys that are always just out of your reach? Any of you been shell-shocked with bad news recently, like Steve Carter was when he found a flooded basement in the home he just put a down payment on? Any of you been standing around a hospital bed with loved ones? Or any of you been in the hospital bed wondering what the future is going to be like? Or as Shauna asked, have any of you made such a mess of things in your life that you wonder deep down if God could still love you? If he would still take you home? The Bible says that on a night like tonight, here and now, Jesus' arms are extended to any and all. And he's quietly wondering yet again this Christmas if it's time for you to come home to God the Father. No questions asked. He will receive you. Get this. He will receive you just as you are. One little side note, if you're ever waiting for God to kidnap